Hello and welcome to CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Paul Hardy. I am the EVP of Professional Service at Ironside. We're a data and analytics consultancy based outside of Boston, as you can see in my background here. And I'm here today with Russ Scoville. He is the VP of Enterprise Data Services at CareSource. Russ, welcome. Glad to be talking with you this afternoon. Part of the move towards a more decentralized and kind of self-service environment the cloud helps enable is a big cultural change, right? There's that need to really begin to change the understanding of the use of analytics, the skill sets that might exist, particularly out of what we call the edge, right out in the business units where the analysts might live. Are you on that kind of a journey as an organization? Are there big cultural changes that are accompanying your migration?
I would say a lot of we have a robust knowledge of source systems across our business user ecosystem, and a lot of that was kind of built because they needed to develop those muscles to answer the questions that were being posed to them. And then as they were looking to join those systems across each other, that's where we were struggling, was how do we go from system A to system B in a continuous context without losing data along the way. So for us, it wasn't as much about decentralizing as it was creating a cohesive central source of truth that could then be expanded to other systems as they came online, which is, interestingly enough, very different than a previous company that I worked at, which had a different set of challenges, so it's every place sort of affords you the opportunity to learn something new, and you definitely can't, pick it up and replicate what you did in the past.
Even healthcare is not universal, because I know you've got a 20-year career in healthcare, but even there you've seen, differences in strategies.
Absolutely. It's funny, even when you look at industry standards like, 834 eligibility data, the industry standards in 834, but none of them are identical. They're all different. You'll see the same thing within, JSON or more modern sort of file architectures too, that everybody's got their own custom flavor of some industry standard, but it's not just a plug and play every time.
Did you find that your tool set as an organization had to expand as well as you move towards self-service? Are there different portions of your architecture or your technology stack that you've needed to add, data munging tools, exploratory tools, things of that nature to sort of empower analysts?
Actually, we use this as an opportunity to simplify the number of tools that people had in the organization. So over time, the amount of sprawl had grown to where people had, picked up a different ETL tool to do one job or a different analytics tool to do another job. And, we found that we had a large number that we were supporting, and we ended up using this as an opportunity to consolidate those rather than to add more to the ecosystem.
That's fantastic.
I don't know that everybody has that same luxury, but if you do, it's a great time to do it. So.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a good catalyst to do a lot of different things, right? So at that time, as you mentioned earlier, sort of a way to address governance differently, a way to engage stakeholders, a way to rationalize your tool set, which is terrific. I'm sure that has ripple effects of benefits in terms of costs and IT support and things of that nature. That's terrific.
It does create some, change is hard, so if somebody's used to using tool A and they get told, tool A is going away, everybody's going to work in tool B, there's change management that has to come with that. And it's a lot of, kind of communication, light touch training, and understanding that, the way that they've always done it is changing, and that has a cost associated too. So, on paper, you can just look and say, hey, I just took 3 tools out of the ecosystem. I saved, $500,000. But there's also I just created a ecosystem where some percentage of the population now has to go learn something new, and that has a ramp up time to it, and an adoption rate to it, and kind of an opportunity cost associated with it that isn't necessarily black and white.
Right. Yeah. Very true. There is that downside challenge to those that can't make the transition. Right. Unfortunately, you find those people everywhere. But I'm sure, back to that cultural change. It's about different aspects of change management, like say training and executive leadership, sponsoring those of that change and making it clear that this is the destination and there's no ambiguity to it. Right. I as a healthcare payer organization at CareSource, I'm sure you're a large consumer of external data or third-party enrichment data that had to become part of your new environment. What kind of a challenge was that? And did you find in the cloud world, as we often have, that it's a more productive environment to help integrate those kinds of external data sources?
It led us down a path that we had not been down before, which was reference data management as part of data governance. So we ended up having to build a sort of subset of data governance that was specifically geared towards understanding our reference data sets, and then understanding when reference data changes over time, what the processes are that support that, whether it's CMS coming out with a new standard for DRG codes, moving from 36 to version 37, and when does the old one expire, and what happens downstream with your historical data when that happens. So we all kind of went through it during the ICD-9 to ICD-10 conversion, but
Right.
While that was a big bang event, there's kind of a consistent level of mini bangs that take place in the healthcare community, and probably every community, whether it's finance or retail or some measure of compliance or marketing, that you're reliant on somebody setting the external standard for code sets that are used within the organization, and then setting triggers to say, hey, this code set's going to expire on 12/31. Let's get prepared, get the data stewards ready, and evaluate what impact this is going to have, and then where we put our adoption to that in, and put that through the data governance council.
Right. Very good. Yeah, I know in prior conversations you had talked about some of the benefits in cloud of kind of mixing analytical data and operational data, having those things merged in a cloud environment. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
There's definitely, there's benefits and challenges to doing both, right? They're viewed in two very different ways, and when somebody looks at analytical data, often it's some period of time back, a look back period of 12 months, 24 months, looking for trends or opportunities that might be available, whereas operational data has that much more real-time component to it. I want to make a decision that I'm going to make an intraday change right now. Paul is headed left and I need him to head right. I want to intervene. And getting access to that data at a more frequent cadence allows you to make those intraday changes to your business. If you have, say, call queues in a call center that are spiking up, or if you have people that are working from a task list and need to bring in more help to make some sort of deadline or SLA that you have with your constituent partners, which is very different than the analytical approach. Sometimes in the analytical side, you'll hear things like, well, if the data is one day late, it doesn't really make that big a difference because we're looking back 3 years. If the data is one day late from an operational standpoint, it makes an enormous difference because everybody's running blind. And that's a consistent challenge at every organization, which is how do you balance those two things. So we've come up with our own approach to how we try to keep refreshing the data that changes more in that real time way, and try to kind of continue up to bring up the cycles, and you'll see that in the cloud, that you're able to do things more with the IoT, or if you were a transportation company that had trucks on the road, where you can actually get that sort of real time data, and make make valid use of it. In the healthcare community, we're still really getting to the point where real time is critical to your success. When you get into like wearable technologies or
Right. Yeah.
things like that, that really exposes the IoT componentry that historically, claims are 90 days behind. So there's a lot less focus on that and more focus on batch processing. You work with state agencies who don't necessarily have real-time data streams either, and hospitals that have nightly run processes. It's not necessarily very adaptive towards the real-time IoT thing yet, but it's headed there. It's absolutely headed there.
Right, right. Yeah, we see that in the logistics world as well. We have clients that have telemetry data that comes from containers, and that integration of, you say, trending information, near real time and real time information is a challenge, but workable in the cloud and can be done cost effectively right as you ramp up the resources, compute and storage that you need for those things. So just take some careful and different kind of thinking about the architecture, right?
It really does. You definitely have to look at it in a much different approach than you would, 10 years ago. It's a completely different world.
Yeah, and it's interesting, your point about sort of ambulatory devices and for diagnostics and things in the healthcare industry generating more of that IoT data today is an interesting twist. Yeah, compared to the volumes of historical data that you required to creep around, electronic health records and things of that nature. So, well, thank you, Russ Scoville. We really appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining me. And everyone else, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.